Seattle may in fact be the stupidest city in the United States.
Be advised, we got zips in the wire down here.
Roger, last Bravo 6. Can't run it any closer. We'll have to try and pack and snake and nape, but we're bingo fuel.
For the record, it's my call. Dump everything you've got left on my pod. I say again, expend all remaining in my perimeter.
Coming to you from behind the lines in Washington State, local and national talk, news, and opinions. This is the Behind the Line podcast. So, as you've probably seen on the news, and as I've talked about on this podcast, the Seattle School District, which recently went back to school, has homeless camps on numerous campuses, and initially the Seattle School District was saying that they would fight for the homeless to be able to remain on school property, much to the displeasure of the parents of these kids coming back to school. And in recent weeks, there's been incidents of homeless people breaking into the schools and causing other problems around the schools. So parents have been pulling their kids out of school and voicing their displeasure with the entire situation. So yesterday, Seattle School District advised the city that they wanted this homeless camp removed from one of their school properties. And now the city is saying, since the homeless camp is on district property, it's up to the district to remove the homeless camp. I mean, you've got to be kidding me that the mayor feels like it's up to the school district to somehow remove a homeless camp. What resources does the school have to remove homeless people, to deal with homeless people? That is the city's job, and that's exactly what the mayor should be doing. And not to mention, the district is part of the Seattle city government, so I'm kind of baffled as to how it's suddenly not the city's responsibility to remove a homeless encampment at a city school district. It's just this never-ending circle of idiocy that goes on in Seattle government. And with this mayor, she is, I mean, for being a U.S. attorney and everything else she's done, it's amazing how the lack of intelligence that this woman has. It's just this ongoing thing, one thing after the next, of just incompetence that she displays in her ability to be the mayor of the city. The mayor needs to start doing her job and taking care of the citizens, and especially the kids at the Seattle School District. Her primary function should be to provide safety and security for the residents, and in this case, the students of Seattle. And speaking of our incompetent mayor, the missing text messages from the time during the riots and the CHOP zone and all this garbage that went on last summer, you just have to ask yourself, I mean, she can't be that stupid, right? And the mayor carries an iPhone for the city business purposes, and the iPhone's default setting for messages and saving messages is to save them forever. And yet somehow her phone gets set to delete them after 30 days. This is something that she would have had to go in and set herself. And isn't it convenient that all those messages during that tumultuous time are just gone now? And not only is it her, but it's like 8 other city officials whose messages would have been pertinent to these lawsuits that are being filed against the city for the way they handled the Chop Zone and these 2 boys that were murdered up there. And once again, isn't it convenient that all the messages are missing? That's not a coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence. The city's going to end up paying out the ass for those lawsuits. My guess is they'll settle for some high dollar amount because if they go to court, they're going to get their asses handed to them. So they're not going to want that. And really, it's kind of unfortunate because these officials should be prosecuted for not saving those messages. They were all given training. The mayor specifically said she was given training when she started about retaining records and messages and that sort of thing. So this isn't something they weren't aware of. They were well aware of it, and yet they did not retain the records as they're legally required to do so. But it's Seattle, and in Seattle, government officials just do whatever they want. And speaking of Seattle officials just doing what they want, the Seattle Inspector General this week has sent a letter to the SPD and the city saying she would like to see Seattle police stop making traffic stops. Have you driven on the roads lately, lady? Have you dealt with these douchebag drivers that Seattle should be famous for? And then you want the police to just stop doing traffic stops because they're dangerous. And of course, she tried to say that's because it's dangerous for the police officers and the public when these traffic stops are done. Well, it's going to be even more dangerous for the rest of us drivers out here if the police aren't enforcing the traffic laws. Can you imagine how much more douchier the drivers will get if they know that they're not going to get pulled over for speeding and driving like they think they've been to some high-speed driving school? This is one of the most stupidest, ridiculous things I've ever heard, to say that this is a basic function of the police department to enforce traffic laws. And to say that they shouldn't go out and do this anymore? I mean, the next thing they're going to say here is that cops shouldn't carry guns either because that's dangerous too. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Seattle pulled something like that. They have decriminalized just about everything in this city. Drugs, theft, vagrancy. They just don't want any laws enforced. When does this stop? When does the city start protecting its citizens again? I can tell you, as a former police officer who's conducted many traffic stops and been in many situations, not good situations, it would be much safer for everybody, citizens and police officers, if people would just stop breaking the law, if people would do as they are instructed when they get pulled over. Just about every one of these police shootings that these blue cities like to cite about police officer misconduct or overreach or being violent, do they ever look at or consider what caused the situation to begin with, what the supposed victim did in the first place that garnered the response from the police that they got. They always seem to brush over that as if none of that matters, and it's just how the police respond to the situation. You know, if you weren't fighting or running or shooting at the cops, then they probably wouldn't fight or run after you or shoot you. But somehow, again, this always seems to get brushed over, and it doesn't really matter what the situation is, you know. It doesn't really matter what the person did, especially if they're black or a person of color. Then somehow they get a free pass, and the cops should have done this or should have done that. Well, maybe the quote victim should have done this or should have done that, or should have just done as they were asked, or maybe not broke the law or whatever. The blame needs to stop being put on the cops every time. Of course, there are times when the cops have done more than what they should have, and I think George Floyd is an example of that. But again, there was a situation that started the whole thing, and for some reason, especially here in Seattle, the word consequences does not seem to hold any sort of weight anymore. They seem to feel like they just seem to act like you should be able to do whatever you want and get away with it. And if you're down and out or poor or a person of color, then that's an excuse to do whatever. And this stuff is really starting to get old. This is not conducive to a normal society. And unfortunately, I think things are just going to continue to go downhill and get worse around here, because I don't see this form of leadership changing. So going down the racist rabbit hole today, there's a news story out from the BBC saying that black people in the U.S., especially in cities, are subject to heat islands caused by roads and tall buildings in the areas they have to live in. This is obviously mostly in cities. And this is caused from systematic racism. Yes, that's right. Heat is racist. If you live in a city, then you've been subjected to systematic racism. And they're saying that because of these heat islands, that blacks are subjected to double the amount of heat as their white counterparts. I'm not sure how this shakes out when you've got just as many or more white people living in the city who would also be subjected to this heat island from buildings and roads, because we all live around them. If you don't like that, then move out to the country, and I'll tell you what, it's a lot cheaper to live outside the city than it is to live in the city. So maybe instead of living in that crappy little apartment, you could actually have maybe a little house with a little yard for the same price or less. And maybe you wouldn't be subjected to that heat island. Now, this report says that this all started back in the 1930s when housing and all of this was not as easily accessible to blacks, and that they weren't allowed to buy homes basically outside the city, or that many real estate agents wouldn't sell to them outside the city. And that may have been the case in the 30s. I'm not going to dispute that, but this is 2021, and it's not like that anymore. And I'm sorry, you can't continue to live on what happened in the past. The past is the past. You can't continue to dwell and ruminate on mistreatment in the past, and that goes for anybody about anything. If you want to move on with your life, you've got to live in the present and do what you can do now. And there's nothing stopping anybody from moving just about anywhere they want. So if you choose to live in the city, that is your choice. If you choose to be on the government dole, also your choice, because there's plenty of jobs out there right now. And if you're trapped because you're stuck on welfare, or you feel like you're stuck on welfare, well, ultimately that's a choice. And only you can get yourself out of that hole. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of the media drumming up all this racist division crap every other day. There's some new thing. They're constantly and consistently trying to drive a wedge between the American people, between whites and everybody else, and it's not good for anyone. And we have to stop listening to it. I'm not denying that there's racism, but it's not nearly as bad as they're claiming. And this just is not a way to progress forward as a society. And I think everybody really knows this. I think most reasonable people know this and probably try to tune it out, but it's just constant when you watch the news on TV. And it's ridiculous.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Behind the Line podcast. I hope you will subscribe to the channel so you can get regular updates. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, I hope you will also like it, share it, and subscribe on YouTube as well. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Anchor, Spreaker. We're on various other podcast platforms. And you can find me on LinkedIn under John Washington. Again, thank you for listening. We appreciate your support.